Hello everybody, thanks for joining us today for our Getting Started with TracerPlus 8.0 webinar. My name is Howie Heckman. I'm one of the software engineers here at PTS, and today I'll be walking you through kind of getting up and running with TracerPlus, learning the different pieces of the software, and how you can kind of create mobile applications very quickly for a Windows Mobile or Android-based device. So I'll kind of go through a live presentation or demo of the applications, show you how you can deploy to both a Windows mobile device as well as an Android emulator, which I have hooked up to my PC here. But it'll give you an idea how quickly you can develop these applications, push them out to your handheld, and get up and running with mobile development with no programming. So today, before I jump into the webinar, I'd just like to talk about a little bit what we'll go over. We'll kind of walk you through getting up and running with quickly creating mobile applications. Again, there's no programming involved in developing applications with TracerPlus. It's kind of a drag and drop tool that allows you to customize mobile forms, up to 32 of them that you can deploy to these different devices, mobile devices. I'll show you how you can deploy to either a Windows Mobile or an Android device. So you can create these mobile applications in TracerPlus Desktop and deploy them to either platform. So the only change there is when you're going to do the deployment to the device, you can pick either you want to deploy to a Windows Mobile or CE device or an Android device. So I'll kind of walk you through that, and you'll see how that happens once we're done with creating our mobile applications. And the last thing I'll talk a little bit about today is connecting these mobile applications that you've created to a pre-existing database, spreadsheet, or just a simple text file. So I'll talk a little bit about our TracerPlus Connect tool, which allows you to marry up these mobile forms that you've created to a pre-existing database and how you can move your data back and forth. So that's usually the tool you'll use after you create your mobile applications or your mobile forms, and it allows you to hook those up to a back-end database so you can move your data back and forth. So before I jump into the webinar, to the demo, I'm going to just show you guys on our website if anybody would like to trial any of the applications or if they haven't downloaded anything yet. If you go to our TracerPlus.com website, you can download all the tools that I'll show you today. So everything is available in a trial mode, and to trial the software, you can jump over to TracerPlus.com and then click on the trials link up at the top. And here you can download all of the software. Everything that we develop is provided in a trial mode, so you can download the application, install it to your device, and really use all of the features of the software, everything that I show you today. And the only limit really is the amount of data you can move back and forth from the mobile forms that you create to your back-end database system. So it'll limit just the movement of the data back and forth. But you can trial all of the features of the software. You can develop these mobile applications, download applications from our Solution Center, deploy them to the mobile device, and see how easy it is to use and how it can fit your need. And then you can trial all of that without purchasing the application. So just to note, if you'd like to download what you see today, go to TracerPlus.com and click on the trials link, and all of the software will be available there. One other thing I would like to note is on the Android side, you can download it from our website, but you can also get it from the Google Play Store on your Android-based device. So if you go to Google Play and search for TracerPlus, you should be able to install it that way. Okay, so really after you go to our website, download the trials, you would then go ahead through the installation process of TracerPlus. You typically start with TracerPlus Desktop. So you can see here up on the step 1, you'd want to download TracerPlus Desktop. Once you download TracerPlus Desktop and install it to your PC, you'll have, and let me hop out of the PowerPoint here. And actually, I'd just like to mention, at the end of the webinar, if you guys have any questions with anything I go through, please feel free to pass them along in the question panel on your go-to application. Okay, so after you download TracerPlus Desktop and install it, you'll be presented with this screen when you open the application up. And this is kind of the home screen of TracerPlus Desktop. And TracerPlus Desktop is the design tool for your mobile application. So it's really the starting point of all of the TracerPlus applications. It's where you're designing your mobile forms, configuring how they behave, all of the features of the software. And when you're all done configuring everything, then you would go ahead and go down to the Build Deploy option here and deploy it to your mobile device. So again, that's either Windows Mobile or Windows CE device or an Android device. So you design everything within TracerPlus Desktop and then do the deployment. If your mobile device does not yet have TracerPlus on it, you would go ahead and install it from the Tools menu here, and you can install to Windows Mobile or Android. And that'll install the TracerPlus client onto your mobile device. So once you have all that set up, you'll have two pieces of software installed. You'll have TracerPlus Desktop, which is running on your PC, and it's the design tool. And then on your mobile device, which I have two connected here, here's a Windows mobile-based device, you'll have TracerPlus, which is the mobile application that a mobile worker will be using out in the field, and it'll load the applications that you've built from TracerPlus Desktop on the mobile device. So here, I have a Windows mobile device connected, and you can see it's in the default state right now. It just has one default form configured, just the session 1. But this is the mobile barcode scanner that I have connected to my PC here. I also have an Android emulator hooked up, which is in the same state here. It's just in the default. It has a default setup of session 01, which is just one default form that's pre-installed with the application. It's not really configured to do anything. It'll just allow you to see the mobile forms on your mobile form on your handheld, and you can kind of enter data if you'd like to through that mobile form and collect some data that way. But really what you'd want to do is go back over to TracerPlus Desktop and get started with configuring a mobile form that'll fit your needs. So put together maybe an asset collecting application or an inventory application or whatever it may be. You'll be designing within TracerPlus Desktop and then deploying to your mobile device that you have connected to your PC. So I have these two connected right now. Okay, so usually when I try to teach people on how to get started with TracerPlus, I mentioned our online solution center. And the solution center is a library that we have on our website of pre-configured applications. And it's categorized by different sections for asset tracking, inventory, and things like that. And we kind of update that every once in a while. We put new applications on there. But it's a good starting point for learning TracerPlus, getting up and running, and see how the different features work. So I'm going to walk you through kind of downloading a Solution Center application today and deploy that to these mobile devices so you can see how quickly it is to get up and running without actually setting anything up and just picking one from our website. Now the Solution Center, you can access it either through the website up in the Solutions category here. And you can see here we have the different categories broken out on the website for asset tracking and management and so on. And if you go in here, you can see all of the different applications we have built and pre-configured that you can download for free and push out to your mobile device. Excuse me. This is also accessible through TracerPlus Desktop. So after you install the application, you can jump over to the home screen here and click this Samples button. And the Samples button really just loads that same website with the different pre-configured applications in the different categories here. So you can see asset tracking and so on. And all of the ones here are the same ones that you saw on the website. It just gives you an easy way of downloading it directly into TracerPlus Desktop so that you can kind of configure and change things if you need to. So I'm just going to pick one here real quick to download. Maybe we'll do this asset location audit. So if you hit select on this, you can see a screenshot of what the application looks like. Gives you a description of what it is. I'll just go back so you can see some of the other ones here. But if you went to something like, I don't know, inventory control here, you can see different inventory applications that we have pre-built here. Here's a simple one for just scanning items and collecting the quantity. But you really just can kind of look through this library and pick one that you'd like to. I'll go ahead with this asset location audit. Okay, and you can go ahead and then just hit next and the import button here. And this will download it from our website, and when the download is complete, you can go ahead and hit finish. And that's going to open up the application from our website directly into your TracerPlus Desktop tool here. So once you open it up, you'll see that it now has a project open called Assets in Room, which is what we downloaded from the website. And we have two what we call sessions or applications on the left-hand side here for what was included in this project. And these are really mobile forms that are deployed to the handheld, and they're customizable by you to fit what you're trying to set up and what you'd like to deploy to the mobile devices. So here you can see I have two, Scan Assets and the Asset List. If I click on any one of these, it'll open it up in the design tool here, so you can go ahead and make changes if you'd like. So when I clicked on Scan Assets, you can see the different fields of information that are included in this form, in this mobile form. So things like location, asset ID, and description, and so on. On the form designer, you can see the form is fully configured based on what we downloaded from the website. So you can see we have a drop-down here for location. We have a grid that will display all of the assets at this location, as well as some additional information for actually performing an asset audit. Okay, so this one has kind of a lot of features here. So again, it's a good place to learn how to configure these TracerPlus mobile applications. Like For instance, here you can see there's a location drop-down that'll show you how a drop-down is configured within TracerPlus. There's a grid on the form here, and this grid is filtered based on the location. So when a user selects the location on the mobile device, it'll show them all of the assets that are supposed to be there. And they can kind of review that through this grid control while they're doing their audit. And I believe in this one, as you scan the assets, they'll be removed from this list. So you know when you're complete with the audit of that location. It'll have removed all of the assets, and when the audit's complete, it should be empty. You know you found everything at that location. But you can go ahead here and you can change things if you'd like. So if you wanted to add a company logo here, you could do that. If you wanted to move things around, change colors and so on, you can configure all of that as you'd like, and then just deploy it to your mobile device to see what that looks like on the handheld. But again, it's a really good spot to learn some of these features. So for instance, this grid control here, this grid control it was added to this form and has some features in it to be filtered based on the location and all that, and you can see how all of that works through the pre-configured application. Okay, but for the demo right now, I'm going to go ahead and try to deploy this down to the handheld. Now, you saw on my connected Windows mobile device here, I just have a single session, the default state of TracerPlus on the handheld. So when I deploy this, I should see these two additional forms here, scan assets and asset list, now deployed on the handheld. Okay. And just to make sure that'll happen, yes, the forms that are visible on the handheld will be the ones that are checked enabled here. So you can disable sessions and they won't appear. But this one has 2 enabled sessions. So I'm going to go ahead now down to the Build Deploy button and just hit Build Deploy. This is going to load the deployment form that will allow you to select which type of platform you'd like to deploy this project to. Now the default in this case is Windows Mobile, which is this device here, which I'm going to go ahead and deploy to. But if you wanted to deploy to an Android-based device, you just, in the Select Platform dropdown, just switch it over to Android. And this will allow you to deploy to an Android device. Now an Android device will connect to your PC in a couple different ways, but you would just go ahead here and maybe use the dropdown to select the Android device that you have connected to your PC, and this could be multiple Android devices if you have a bunch plugged in. You can also use the Android debug bridge, or if your Android device connects as a mapped drive, so like a thumb drive does, you can select that here, and then you'll have the mapped drives available in this drop-down list. I have 2 connected right now. Actually, this is a Windows mobile device, but I have 2 different types connected here, and when I deploy to the emulator, I'm going to use this Android debug bridge. But I'm going to start off by deploying to the Windows mobile device. So Windows mobile, I'll just go ahead and select that, and then just hit Deploy here. Now this will go through a little bit of a deployment process. It shuts TracerPlus down on the handheld, and it'll reopen when the deployment's complete. And now you can see that from the project that I downloaded from our website, from the Solution Center, I had scan assets and asset lists, and both of those forms now are available on my mobile device. So you can see from the project tree over here, I have that available. And if I go ahead and open one of these applications up, you'll see that I now have the mobile form that was designed from within TracerPlus Desktop available on the mobile device here, and I can go ahead and use this if I'd like. You can see some of the rooms were deployed with the application here, so you can use this drop-down. You have the grid control on the handheld that allows you to see all the assets at that location. But you can go ahead and play with this to see how it works, how everything's configured. And you can see in just a couple of minutes here, I got a fully configured application downloaded from our website and deployed to my mobile device here. Okay, now the same goes for Android. If I go back to TracerPlus Desktop, and now I switch this to Android, I'm going to go ahead and deploy to this, use Android Debug Bridge, which will deploy to my Android emulator here. And again, this could just be an Android device that's connected to your PC, but I'm using this so I can share the screen. And again, right now it's just in the default state of session 01 because we didn't deploy anything yet. And if I just go ahead and switch this to Android, pick the method of deployment and hit deploy, this will go through the same deployment process and download the deploy the project to my Android emulator. So I'll let that deploy. Now on the Android side, it doesn't close the application down, but it will refresh once the deployment's complete. It'll refresh the new configuration. Okay, so the deployment is going here. Okay, the deployment is complete. So now on the Android side, you can see it didn't close down or refresh, but if I actually try to go into the Session 01 form, it'll reload the application because it'll see that changes have been deployed to the device. It'll reload the launcher form, and just like on the Windows Mobile side, now I have the same application deployed to two different platforms. I have one here as the Windows Mobile CE device, and one here as the Android device. On this Android device, this has a much higher resolution display, so if I open the Scan Assets form, you'll see it'll be much smaller here, but it'll be set up as the same application. Okay, so deploying this to the two different platforms, I was able to get the same project deployed to both an Android and Windows-based device. And on the Android side, you may want to play around with the screen size a little bit, just so you can deploy a form that fits the higher resolution display a little bit better on the device. So here you can see they look the same, but it's much smaller on here. On the Android, I can't do it on this emulator, I don't think, but you can zoom in, so you can actually pinch and spread your fingers to zoom into the form, and then it'll look identical to what you have on Windows Mobile here. Okay, but within a couple minutes here, I was able to deploy the same application from our Solution Center to either a Windows-based device or an Android-based device here, and you can see it's both the same application, and you can go ahead and use both of these to now perform an asset audit on either one of these mobile devices. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and make some changes to our TracerPlus desktop project, because this is just what we downloaded from the website, but I want to show you how you can kind of configure things that you need that may not be available on the Solution Center, or maybe you can download something from the Solution Center, make some minor changes to it so that you can configure it to what you need to set up. Okay, so I'll go back to TracerPlus desktop here, and I'm actually going to change my project name. Let's see, getting started. I'll change the project name to Getting Started because I want to add additional forms to my application. Now, right now, it's just an asset collecting application. I just have scan assets in the asset list. But like I mentioned before, you can have up to 32 mobile forms deployed to a device at a time. So right now, I just have these two, scan assets and asset list. But if I wanted to add to this, and let's say we wanted to do some type of maybe a fire extinguisher inspection form, well, what I do is I just hit the plus button up here in the Project Explorer, and it'll add a new form to our application or project in a default state. So now this third form is called Session 03, and I would just go ahead and start configuring my new form. So if I wanted to do a fire extinguisher inspection, I would go ahead and add that session name to our project, and now I need to start configuring that session. If I were to deploy this right now, you would have three icons on the handheld. You'll have scan assets, asset lists, as well as fire extinguisher. And it's in a default state, so we need to go ahead and configure this. So now I'm going to configure some of these fields so that you can see maybe how they were done on the asset list and how you can kind of change some of the attributes of these fields. So typically this would be done maybe by taking a pre-existing paper form that you guys already have and you're already using for doing some type of inspection or something like that. And you'd really just take the fields that you have on that paper form and start adding them to your field settings within TracerPlus desktop here. So for the fire extinguisher inspection, maybe you're going to do something like add a location field. You want to fill out where this extinguisher is located. Maybe then you want to do an extinguisher ID. This is maybe a barcode that you want to scan on the extinguisher. Maybe then you want to do something like check the pressure of the extinguisher, or maybe you want to do, there's a checkbox for needs replacement. Maybe also you want to capture a date time of when this inspection was done. So you're really just adding these fields of information to your form as you need them. So again, this could be some type of paper form that you already have existing, or maybe you have some type of database application that's set up that you guys maybe use for fire extinguisher inspection, and you want to mobilize that data that you have in a PC-based application. You want to put that onto a mobile device so you can do this out in the field rather than coming back and entering it into the existing system that you already have. So you just go ahead and start adding these fields that you'd like to collect. Remove the ones that you don't. Maybe we'll do like a user, the guy that did the inspection. So we'll just call it user. Okay, so you're just adding these fields, and now once you add the fields, if you went over to the form designer, you can create the form designer based on the field settings that you have created there. So if I do a create default, it's going to take the fields that I've added to my field list here and build a form based on those settings. So right now you can see those fields that I added. You can also see that they're just simple text fields. So something like I mentioned, this needs replacement, maybe we wanted that to be a checkbox and not a text field. We're going to have to go back and change that. So, but you can see how it built the form based on my field settings. Okay, so now after I add those fields, I want to go ahead and configure the attributes of those fields so that it makes it easier for the user to get to use the application. You don't want them typing in maybe a location every time when you only have a limited number of locations. The location then may come back differently every time. So similar to on a paper form, if you were if someone was to handwrite the location in there, maybe they wrote it differently this time, maybe scribble the next time, and you know those values, which are only supposed to be a limited number of values, can change based on who's writing it out or if it's legible or not. Here we can change it so that it's a drop-down, so the user has to select from just a set number of items, and it also makes it so they don't have to type that location in each time. So to do that, I'm going to change the field type of the location field. So I'm going to switch it here to a drop-down in this case, but there are a number of different items you have available, so I'll just kind of touch on these because they're pretty important in when you're setting these applications up. The first one, again, is a drop-down. That's so you can pick from a list of items. You can add a checkbox field to your form. You can add a variable field type, which allows you to do things like capture the user ID of someone that's logged in. You can do an auto number type field, so if you're familiar with the database, you can have a value that's always incrementing every time you save the data from this form. You can have a signature field type that allows you to capture a signature on the form. So if you had a signature, when you tap into that field, it'll bring up a little signature box so you can sign. There's a calculated field type. The calculated field type allows you to do things like mathematical operations between fields. So you can add fields together, multiply fields together. You can also do GPS coordinates, so if you wanted to add geo-tracking to your form, so if it was somebody that was using this device out in the field and you wanted to capture those coordinates, you can do that through a calculated field. Excuse me. You can also do barcode parsing, so that you can parse a barcode. So let's say, for instance, you had a 2D barcode on the back of a driver's license. You can pull out the different fields of information from that barcode and populate your form automatically with that one scan, and you can do that through calculated fields. So if you wanted to pull out a first name and a last name from that driver's license, you would configure a calculated field to pull those bits out of the barcode and put them in the correct fields on the form. The last field type here is an image field type. An image field type allows you to take a picture on your mobile application. So if you're doing an inspection and maybe you wanted to, actually let's go ahead and maybe add that. If you wanted to take a picture of any damage on your fire extinguisher, you would go ahead and just add a damage field to your form and then maybe switch that field to an image. And that would allow you to, when you build your form, I'll go back over here and reset this form, the damage field is now a button, and when you press that button, it'll load, if the device has it, the camera on the device so that you can take a picture of any damage that may have occurred with this fire extinguisher in this case. But if we go back here now for the location, again, I want to set this to be a drop-down. Typically, when you change the field type, it'll load some additional tabs in the back here. So for the drop-down, it loaded this drop-down options, and from here you can add the items to your drop-down list. So let's go ahead and maybe do room 101 and 102. So you can add all of those fields here. You can also do drop-down filtering, so you can filter the drop-down. So if you did like a make and model in the asset application, you can have, or I should say manufacturer, and I guess make model's okay. But you would select the make, and then that would filter the model, drop down to models that were only available for that manufacturer make. So if you had like PCs or something, if you picked Dell, it would show you only Dell PCs, or HP, it would show you only HP PCs. But that would allow you to filter those drop-downs. But that's all you really need to configure to add the items to that drop-down. You can also, just to note, you can sync drop-down data. So if this data was available in a database or an Excel spreadsheet or text file somewhere, you can sync that using our Connect product so you're not entering all of them one by one here. Or if they change on a regular basis, you can sync them to the handheld so that those drop-downs can stay up to date. The extinguisher ID, will probably just want to leave that as a text field. That's just something someone maybe is keying in or is scanning the barcode on the extinguisher, and that allows you to scan that and enter it as a text data in the field. So I'm just going to leave that as it is. For check pressure, this one is going to be a numeric value, so maybe I'll change the data type to a number. Needs replacement, again, this one I wanted to make a checkbox. So just the user saying, okay, this needs to be replaced. That value of true or false or yes or no could get sent back to a database somewhere so that someone knows which extinguishers they need to replace. For the date time, this one I'm going to change the data type to a date time. You can format your date time, so you can maybe only want to capture the time or maybe only the date or whatever format you may need. You can do that here through this format button. The user, this time maybe I want to capture the user ID of the person that's currently logged into TracerPlus on the handheld, because you can use user logins. So they would open up TracerPlus on the mobile device, so they'd have to log in. You can capture their username when they do that so that you know who performed this inspection. So to do that, I would just switch the the field type to variable. In the variable options, I just want to make sure that it's set to user. Okay, and there's a number of other options there, but for this case, I'm going to use the user variable type. Damage is the image field. Okay, so now I'll go back over to here. I'll refresh my form. You can see now I have the location dropdown is actually a dropdown on our form. The extinguisher is a text field. Check pressure is a numeric field, so those look the same. You have the checkbox for needs replacement or not. And you have these other fields here that are available or that have been added to the form, and they've been added now as they've been configured through the field settings. Okay, so now I have an easier to use application for the mobile device, but it's still not probably the easiest to use because right now all of these fields are lined up from top to bottom. And I can still simplify this in how the user is actually using it by controlling the flow now of how they're entering data. So in this case, something like the date time, they're never going to enter that. That's always just going to be populated automatically on the handheld. So maybe I want to make that read-only. Same with the username. I don't want them keying in someone else's user, so I'm going to go ahead and make that one read-only as well. But we can also control how the cursor is jumping around on the form. So by default, the cursor is going to start off in this location field. And I can change where it goes after I select or enter a location from this drop-down. Now, I'd probably want it to go to the extinguisher ID here because that's going to be the next field of information that the user is going to key in. But let's say this needs replacement is different. The needs replacement, I don't want it to jump down to the next field, which is date time. I want that to go maybe back up to the next extinguisher. So I'm going to go ahead and put that one as extinguisher ID. So that means if they check this needs replacement, it's going to automatically jump the cursor back up to the extinguisher ID. One other thing I can do also is I can auto-submit the data if that's checked. That auto-submit will allow them to, once they check this, it's going to save this data automatically and then jump the cursor up ready for the next one. The same thing for the check pressure. The check pressure, I'm probably going to, the needs replacement should probably be moved up one, but for the check pressure, I'm going to have that jump back to the extinguisher ID, and I'm going to auto-submit it. So now the user is basically selecting a location, scanning the extinguisher, keying in a pressure, hitting the enter key on the mobile device, and now it's going to jump the cursor back up to the next extinguisher so that they can go ahead and scan the next one. For the location drop-down, maybe I only want them to enter that once. Maybe there's multiple extinguishers at a location. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off clear on submit. So that means when this data is saved, keep that field value in there so the user doesn't have to select it again, and they can continue on with their inspection without having to change it until they actually change location. Okay, so I think that's what I want to set up for my form here. Maybe just to touch on some of these other field settings that you have. Again, in the general area, you have your field types and your data types, whether or not they're read-only and visible and so on. After scan is really where you're controlling the flow of how you're entering data on the form, so controlling where the cursor is going, whether or not the data is saving automatically when a user enters data into that field, and things like that. The validation settings here, you can validate data on your form, so you can make it so that maybe the extinguisher ID, we want to force them to enter something. So I'm going to put a min length of 1 there. That'll make it so that they can't submit data with a blank extinguisher ID, so it's going to limit the number of errors on the form. You have a number of different options here that allows you to validate data, and you can do things like play custom sounds based on when data is invalid, so you know exactly what's wrong. You can do a custom validation error message so that if they forget to scan the extinguisher ID, rather than saying min length error in extinguisher ID, you can put something like please scan you forgot to scan the extinguisher, and things like that. So you have a lot of settings here to validate the data, to make sure the data is correct before the user can save it, so that when it gets back to your database, it's not bad data. It's always going to be something that's complete that they filled out on the form. Another powerful feature here, which I didn't add to my session, but it was actually set up in the scan assets, are the lookup options. Now, every field on your form you can configure as a lookup. And what a lookup allows you to do is look up previous data or prior data for the particular item that you scan or key in or enter onto the handheld. So in the case of this scan assets application, when you scan an asset ID, you don't want the user to have to key in a description. You just want that description to pop up on the field or on the form so that they can just kind of verify that they scan the correct thing and they're looking at what they were intending to scan. So that's when you would configure a lookup. And you can see here, this one has a fully configured lookup, which is based on location plus asset ID. And that means look up this asset at this location and give me the description if it's found. And so it really makes it easier for someone on the form to scan an item and look up and see the description. That it's just going to populate on the form. So in this case, this description field, which actually looks like it could be read-only here, will be automatically populated when the user scans the asset ID. So that's what a lookup does. It allows you to populate the form automatically with pre-existing data that you already have, so that you can maybe see the description, or maybe do something like in an inventory situation. You could scan an item and look up a quantity or something like that, so what you're expecting in your database. So that's what a lookup is. So that's a pretty powerful feature within TracerPlus, and it's pretty easy to configure to pre-populate data on a form. Okay, so that's really all you have for setting up the forms and the field settings. Some of the other form or session settings you have up available on this toolbar up at the top, you have, like we talked about, the form designer. The form designer allows you to control what this looks like, so maybe we want to make this look a little prettier. Let's actually double the size of this. If you wanted to scale this up for an Android type device, you can change the form size. So I'm going to go ahead and change it to a custom form size here, and I'm going to double the size and hit apply. And with this checkbox here, it'll refresh the form. Let me do that again. It'll refresh the form to that size. It'll attempt to scale everything up for you when you have this checkbox here, automatically scale, so that you can take a pre-existing form and kind of stretch it out. In some cases, it won't scale things as you're expecting, but in that case, you could refresh the form. But it'll scale the form up to that resolution, and now if you deployed it to something like an Android device, that form will be larger for you, so that you can see all the information on that screen without having to zoom in to the form. So here you can see this is my form. I'm going to kind of pretty it up a little bit. Maybe we'll make all of these text fields the same size. So you can go ahead and use these controls up on the top to kind of line things up as you need them. You can maybe change the caption of this tab, which right now says 1 through 13. I'm just going to call it inspection. You can change the color of everything. You can add images to the form. You can change the sizes. And again, this is just kind of a drag and drop tool to design these things. Let's change the background color. Make it a nice light sky blue. Okay, so you can customize all this stuff, and if you wanted to add a company logo or whatever, you can do that as well using this toolbar on the right. There's this image option. You can add an image to the form to make it look a little bit nicer. Okay, you can change all font sizes and all that. The grid option here, like I showed you in the previous scan assets form, that is available here on the toolbar. You can add a grid to your form. So maybe in this case you might want to add a grid that'll show you all of the extinguishers that you have in your inventory, and that's useful if maybe you don't have barcoded extinguishers. You could add a grid to the form that just has all of your extinguishers, and you can pick from them from that grid, so you can perform the inspection that way. Just to touch on some of the additional options you have up at the top here, the data capture settings, this allows you to turn on and off a barcode scanner, turn on and off an RFID scanner. TracerPlus supports RFID scanning with different supported devices. You can use Motorola RFID scanners, and that allows you to add RFID to your application. So even if you had a pre-existing maybe asset collection form that you've developed in TracerPlus Desktop, you can go ahead and jump over to the data capture form in 8.0 and turn on the RFID scanner. And now not only will you be able to scan barcodes for your form, but you'll be able to scan RFID. And that's very useful for scanning large number of items by just pulling the trigger on the device and capturing all of that information. And we have users that scan thousands of RFID tags at a time, performing audits of a certain location, doing an inventory of a location through RFID. So you can kind of just turn that on here if you'd like to make your application an RFID enabled form. You have smart form options. Smart form options allow you to define rules for your form, and the rules can be things like maybe data begins with, and you could do something like if data begins with a P, let's do something that maybe begins with an F, you can put that, force that data, I'm in the scan assets form here, so actually let's do then, if data begins with an A, we can force that data into the asset ID field. So if you scan a barcode that starts with an A, TracerPlus then will recognize it as an asset ID and force that data into the asset ID field. And that's useful for if you'd like out-of-order scanning. So some people use that if they have like a number of barcodes that they need to scan into a single form. So if you had something like a maybe a part number and a quantity barcode, you could scan a barcode that starts with a P. That'll go into the part number field on your form. If you scan a barcode that starts with a Q, that'll go in your quantity field on the form. And you don't have to scan them in order. You could scan the quantity first, then the part number, and it'll put the data into the correct field. But you have a number of different rules you can set up here. Other rules are data ends with, maybe a barcode scan complete. Barcode scan complete would make it so that any barcode that has just been scanned, that will force it into the asset ID field. So that'll stop a user really from being able to scan into like a location field. Even if they do, it'll force that value that was just scanned into your asset ID field. You have different options here for importing and exporting of data. Now, if you're not using our TracerPlus Connect tool, which is a synchronization tool, which I'll show you in just a minute, that moves data back and forth automatically for you over Wi-Fi or through the Cradle type connection. If you're not using that, you can import and export text files directly from the handheld, and that'll create a text file locally on the device, which you can then copy over to your PC. But all of that's configurable here. You can configure the format of that text file, as well as which fields are included in the export. You can also print an email from TracerPlus. You can print all of your form data from the handheld that you've collected to a mobile, like Bluetooth type printer, or maybe a TCP/IP printer. You can print all of that data directly from TracerPlus to that printer. You can also do email messaging as well as text messaging from TracerPlus. So here in the messaging section, you can configure the format of what that email will look like. So you can define custom email formats. And then all of the data that you've collected in your form can be sent out in an email or even just a text message if you'd like to do that as well. You can take field data, put that into the text message, and send it to mobile phone or something. But you can just to note, you can send emails from TracerPlus, and that's useful for things like an inspection. You can send an email to somebody that needs to be notified that that inspection was complete, and it can also have the results of that inspection sent to them in the email. So whether or not things had passed or failed. If a signature or an image were captured on that form when you're doing the inspection, those would be sent in the email as an attachment. So that's a pretty powerful feature of TracerPlus. And there's some additional settings that I won't go to in detail here in the advanced section that allow you to configure different features of this form and how data is updated and posted to the database. Okay, but that's kind of all I wanted to configure for my fire extinguisher inspection here. So I'm going to go ahead and actually deploy this now to our device. So open up the form. Go back to Build Deploy. So again, every time you're done with setting up your mobile applications, your project in TracerPlus Desktop, you would just go ahead to the Build Deploy, and this will update the handheld. So it'll open the Build Deploy form based on the last platform that you deployed to. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Deploy here. This will go through the deployment process, kind of packages the application up, pushes these forms down to the handheld, and updates the configuration on the handheld. So just let that go. And now once this is complete, you should see a new mobile form on our handheld, which doesn't really have to do with the first two forms that we have. And I did that so you can see that you can really add forms to your TracerPlus Desktop project for any number of applications. Again, well, up to 32 that you can include in one project. So here now, I'll go ahead and I'll click on a form here so that TracerPlus sees the configuration change. It'll load those configuration changes within TracerPlus. You can see now I have a third form available on the home screen of TracerPlus. If I go ahead and click on the fire extinguisher form here, you'll see that it's set up just like what we have back in our design tool here, and I can go ahead and start filling out my form. So you can see it has a date timestamp. This user ID here, this is since I don't have user logins turned on, it'll actually populate the device ID in the field rather than the currently logged in user. So I don't have, if you go back to the project settings in admin, I don't have require login turned on. If I had that, the person that logs in, that'll be displayed in that field. Right now it's the device ID, which is a unique ID for this handheld. So in this case, you can, with the data that's captured in the inspection, you can see which device performed the inspection as opposed to which user performed the inspection. But you can see here now I have the checkbox, which actually was going to attempt to submit that data, but I have a min-length error. You can see I didn't give my custom error message, so it's just a min-length error there. But now I didn't enter an extinguisher ID, so it puts the cursor back up in that extinguisher ID and says, hey, you have to enter this data before you can save it. Okay, so that's kind of an application I configured from scratch. I added it to a pre-existing application that I downloaded from our website. You guys can all do the same. You can download that same Scan Assets application from your TracerPlus desktop installation and go ahead and play with it yourself. One thing I'd like to mention on the Scan Assets form, if you guys do want to kind of make changes here, the form is when you select an item here, you'll see this little lock. Just go ahead and unlock the control so that you can move things around. When it has that lock there, it's just so that when you're done setting everything up and you don't want to accidentally move things around, you can lock it so that it stays in place and stays there. Excuse me. So to unlock it, you just pick the control, and there's a locked over on the right-hand side here. Just set that to false. Okay. But you can go ahead and download that application, open it up in your TracerPlus desktop application, and deploy it to a mobile device. And you can do that all in a trial mode. So if you guys want to try this today, you can go ahead and do that. Okay, so that's all I really wanted to walk through in TracerPlus Desktop. I did want to jump into TracerPlus Connect to show you how you can hook up these mobile forms to a pre-existing database. So that's usually the second part, or the part I recommend to people to kind of set up after you have everything configured on your mobile device. So let's just say now we're all complete with the mobile device. It's perfect. I don't want to make any changes to this. I now just want to hook it up to my database or Excel spreadsheet on the back end. Well, what I would do is jump over to TracerPlus Connect. And TracerPlus Connect is the third piece of software to the TracerPlus suite. So you have the TracerPlus Desktop Design Tool. You have TracerPlus, which is running on the mobile devices. And then you have TracerPlus Connect, which is handling the movement of data to and from your mobile forms to your Excel spreadsheet, your text file, or your ODBC database. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to go ahead and start a new project. So let me delete what I have here, and I'm going to start from scratch. So I'm going to go ahead and hit New. The first thing I need to do is select the type of syncing I want to do. Now, by default, you do a sync profile, and a sync profile will move data back and forth from these handhelds at a set time, and it'll move all of the data kind of at once. So that's useful if you want to do like cradle syncing. So you pop the device in the cradle, and you want to sync and move that data all at once. So that, say you went out and did all of your fire extinguisher inspections. At the end of the day, you want to put it in the cradle and sync it. If you're doing it in that scenario, you want to make sure it's a sync profile here for the syncing type. If you want to allow the user to fill out this inspection form, and when they hit submit or save on their form, if you want that data that they just entered to get sent wirelessly to the backend database, so it would update that database immediately, then you would pick the live profile here. Go back to connect. Then you pick a live profile. So a live profile allows you to hook up these forms in real time to a pre-existing database or Excel spreadsheet or something like that, so that you can fill out the form. When the user hits save, it sends that data wirelessly, if you have a WAN or a Wi-Fi connection, to your database. And it's not saved locally on the device. So it gives you a real-time application that's kind of a form that's out in the field that's directly hooked up to your database. That's also the case if you're using lookups. So like I showed you before in this scan assets form, this description, it's looked up when you scan an asset. Well, if you want that to become directly from the database immediately when they scan the asset, you would want a live sync profile. So that would say, okay, when the user scans this asset, it's going to go to the database over your WAN, your cellular or Wi-Fi connection to try to get that description. It's not going to try to get it locally on the device. Okay, so to set this up, I'm actually going to go ahead and select the sync profile. And one other thing that you select here is the project that you're currently using from TracerPlus Desktop. So I'm going to go ahead and select that project. And you remember I switched the name to Getting Started because now it's not only an asset collection form. So here's my Getting Started project. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And I'm going to hit Create Profile. Okay, so now I'm presented with my first syncing profile. Basically what I want to do is add to this profile what are called sync processes. And a sync process is a movement of data from a source to a destination. Now the source, in my case, let's say I want to hook up my fire extinguisher inspection, is going to be TracerPlus. So what I want to do here is I want to download all of the fire extinguishers that were inspected, so all of the the completed inspections from the handheld, and I want to enter that into an Excel spreadsheet. So what I would do is go ahead and go over to, on the source side, select TracerPlus. Since I linked my project, I now select the fire extinguisher project. And now I want to select the destination of where that data is going. So the destination could be things like an ODBC database data source. So that could be like an Access database or an Oracle database, a MySQL database or something like that. An Excel spreadsheet or a text file. So if I wanted to send this to an Excel spreadsheet, I would go ahead and select Excel. I would then pick my Excel workbook that I want to load. I don't know if I have any. Let's see. Here's a do tag list. Imagine this was called fire extinguisher list. You would go ahead and open that tag list, and now what you're doing is you're basically marrying up your fire extinguisher form that you have on the mobile device to an Excel worksheet that you have selected now on here, my locally, the C drive here. And you're just marrying the two up. So now this will actually load the different worksheets that are available in that workbook. And once it loads that, you'll see the different sheets you have available. So you may have an Excel workbook that already has a couple sheets. So you pick the sheet you'd want to send all of your fire extinguisher inspections to. And then down below, you're marrying up the fields that are available on the handheld to the columns in Excel. So if you wanted all of the locations that were collected to go to column A, extinguishers to B, and so on, you just marry them up here. You can move these around. So if you wanted the location to go to column F, you can do that. You can change these mappings. Okay, but now basically what happens here is anytime I trigger this sync, and I can do that through the cradle or over I can put a button on my form to trigger the sync. it'll move all of the data from our that was collected from our fire extinguisher form on the handheld to this sheet 1 in our tag list Excel workbook. And it's just going to take all of the data and move it to that location. So that's how you would automatically, or in this case through a button action or through the cradle, sync your data from the handheld directly into that Excel workbook. And it's moving that data automatically. You don't have to move any text files or anything like that off of the device. If I wanted to, or just to make this actually make sense here, I'm going to say download inspection. So you name the sync process to what the process is actually doing. The same will happen if I want to go ahead now and download my assets. Well, let's go ahead and say download asset audit. Okay, download asset audits. And now I'm just going to go ahead and select, I'm going to, again, TracerPlus. I want to use the scan assets form from the handheld. That's the one that we have selected here. I'm running a little over time for you guys. And then I'm going to go ahead and select a destination. Now, in this case, I can select a completely different destination. So let's go ahead and select ODBC this time. When you select ODBC, you can select the database on your PC here that you want to sync your data to. So this will have all of your databases. In this case, I'm going to go ahead, and you guys will have this available if you install TracerPlus Connect. I'm going to go ahead and select the TracerPlus Connect sample. When you select the database, it'll populate the table drop-down with all of the tables that are available in that database. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and select Asset Audits. And just like in the Excel instance, it loads the field mappings down below. And you really just want to marry up the fields that are available on your TracerPlus form to the fields that are available in that destination database. So here you can see right now they don't line up because it's not just A, B, and C. So I want to move this around. This location, I want to move up one. So now I'm marrying up the location fields to the location. SID to ID. Description, I don't know if I have a description in that. Since it's an audit, you don't necessarily have to move the description back to the audits table. All assets found, I want to move that one up one to match up to this. So you're really just marrying up those fields on your form to the destination. I can just remove these other two here. Just so that the data is moving correctly from the handheld to your destination database. Okay? So that's kind of a brief overview of TracerPlus Connect. Again, the syncing tool. It hooks your forms up to a pre-existing database. And there's a lot of options here that I won't go into today, but we will have future, and we do have webinars up on our website that go into detail on all of the options for TracerPlus Connect and really controlling the movement of data from the source to the destination and how you configure the flow of how that data is moving through your sync process list, as well as creating additional sync profiles for moving that data as you need it back and forth. Okay, so with that, I appreciate and thank everyone for joining us on the webinar today. We look forward to seeing you again in the future. All of our contact information is up on the website, so please reach out to us with any feedback on these webinars or any other questions that you have. And I thank you all for joining us, and everyone have a great day. All right, bye-bye.